shadow, wood, sword, thunder, power, sleep. Cardcaptors of the cloud, expect the unexpected now.
Okay, raise your hand if you're a 90s kid who could quote that entire verse verbatim. Cardcaptor Sakura is such a weird beast to talk about when it comes to how the brand has been jumbled and bounced around over here in the English-speaking world. To many, the franchise is a staple of anime pop culture. However, that exposure might have come at the cost of a lot of the show's key qualities being properly adapted. Cardcaptor Sakura has not one, not two, but 4 different English dubs scattered throughout its different installments. Not only does this just make it hard to recommend in English at all, but the actual quality of these adaptations varies to some pretty extreme degrees from dub to dub. But before we take this little journey down memory lane, be sure to give the video a like, subscribe for more content covering shows like this, and maybe check out our Patreon if you'd like to show your support. Also, any corrections can be found in the pinned comment down below. So without further ado, let's inspect the secret of the cloud. The version of this anime that I and a lot of other people are probably most familiar with was the version that aired on television between the years of 2000 and 2001. This dub was just labeled as Cardcaptors, and growing up I could have sworn that the dub was commissioned by 4Kids after comparing it to other hack dubs from around the same time. In reality, Cardcaptors was actually licensed and distributed by Nelvana, a children's entertainment company in Canada, while the dub was handled by Ocean Productions, the same company responsible for dubbing Death Note and Black Lagoon.
This is a pain in the ass. I say we kneecap this pussy. There'll be no secrets after that.
However, this doesn't mean that the dub wasn't a victim of practices that weren't uncommon with other anime localizations at the time. Keeping with broadcast standards and being consistent with other Western children's shows, certain relationships and situations were altered or removed. Some are a bit understandable, like how Sakura's dad married her mother while he was a teacher and she was his student, which I'd imagine would be a pretty difficult thing to air on Western television even by today's standards. Then there's a lot of romantic overtones between family members that was also removed, both by toning down the character affections in the writing, while also removing the familial relationships altogether. However, same-sex romances were also severely downplayed, and if you thought the cousins thing in the old Sailor Moon dub was bad, you'd be right, but combine that with everything else I just mentioned and we're talking about repurposing roughly 70% of the entire show. To work around all the cut content, footage from other episodes was constantly extended or reused, with some Western episodes containing more flashbacks than a typical Naruto episode, with the help of really basic video transitions and the occasional poorly edited lip flap.
It's so unfair! What else did your mom say last night? Is your family glad the cards are safe again?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, what's wrong?
Even the romance between Sakura and Shaoran was removed, despite it being one of the show's main emotional cores, and in some cases, the main thrust of entire episodes. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant Sakura and Shaoran. Yes, like with Yu-Gi-Oh!, almost every character was renamed to something that sounds like a Western equivalent to their Japanese one except for the main leads. Although it doesn't really matter in Sakura's case, considering the exaggerated way that her name is pronounced. But that's not the only thing that this dub has in common with shows like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon. Some sound effects were altered, and the entire musical score was replaced with new music more indicative of the time. Nelvana even produced a whole album's worth of original insert songs that played during the anime as needle drops. And while they are not nearly as memorable as this, some tracks do have their own little retro catchy charm to them.
I hope I can catch up with him. Just around the corner. And this is how it all began.
All 70 episodes of the series were dubbed in Canada and aired on major networks in multiple regions throughout the world while featuring English versions of the original opening and ending themes. However, this wasn't the version that I originally grew up with. The version that aired on Kids WB was an even more hacked up version of the Nelvana dub. A good chunk of the show revolved around collecting cloud cards, artifacts inspired by traditional tarot cards, but the additional edits and a lot of the show's Western marketing heavily leaned into that as a selling point. Which new card will Sakura and gang collect this week? Tune in to find out, and don't forget to buy your very own cloud card set at your local retailers. Some episodes also aired out of order, while others were left out completely to refocus the series to be more action-oriented for the appeal of young boys, as they were seen as one of the largest audiences for cartoons at the time. And one way of accomplishing this was to really push Shaoran as sort of a rival dual protagonist.
One Cloudbook.
It's unstoppable!
Only one Lee Shoran.
Ah! Lightning!
Only one Sakura Avalon.
I can do this!
And now they're only on Fridays. Cardcaptors, every Friday at 4:30, only on Kids WB.
I mean, you could make the argument that he was that for a while, but the irony is that his original arc revolves around him removing himself from that role, because this is, and has always been, Sakura's story. Apparently, the first episode that aired in the Kids WB version was Sakura's Rival, which was the 8th episode of the series, having removed episodes focusing on Sakura in order to have the show start with Shaoran's arrival. This version ran for about 39 episodes, changing the original episode order, but finishing with the show's actual final episode, where half of it had to be removed anyway because it was all about Shaoran confessing his feelings, which we couldn't show anyway because romance is bad and look, it's all a big mess. Full disclosure, I will always have a nostalgic fondness for this dub. I admittedly did have a smile on my face rewatching a bit of it for this video, and despite the fact that it really has not aged that well, I do have to give credit in some places where credit is due. Even though most Japanese terminology and culture was removed, it still implied that the series is set in Japan due to the presence of Japanese Texan cuisine, and I was very surprised that Sakura and Shaoran were played by relatively young actors, which, as far as I remember, wasn't a common practice at the time for hack dubs. It was also crazy to go back and hear some actors with the hindsight of their other work that would also end up defining my childhood.
Welcome, Cardcaptor fans! I'm everyone's favorite host, Kiro, telling you like it is!
I'm a woodpecker. Except with dirt.
If you were going to be reincarnated, why did you force us to choose a new master?
I'm speechless! I mean, this is an absolute coup. The displacement of perspective. Why would...
I thought you were speechless.
If I am to lose all my powers, I won't be able to sense if Sakura's in trouble anymore. You must promise me you'll protect her.
It's a money tree! I'm rich!
I either just made your childhood better or worse with that information, and I will take credit for both.
Hello? An original scene transition. Interesting.
Even the ADR director would later go on and direct some really memorable uncut Canadian dubs like Inuyasha, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, and one of the dubs for Gintama? Look, I promise we'll talk about this at some point, let's just get through one mess at a time. Plus, while the music was replaced, it did still have moments of silence, and the script wasn't afraid to bring up death as early as the first few minutes of episode 1. In fact, the first Cardcaptors movie, which was also done by Nelvana, actually had death as a major plot point for its villain, and probably showcases the best the dub has ever sounded with little to no on-screen edits. However, even at its best, it's clear that this dub wasn't made to adapt the spirit of the original. While I think everyone was decently cast despite sounding very different compared to the seiyuu, for better or worse, everyone's acting sounds like it was ripped right out of a Disney Channel show from the early 2000s. Sometimes that comes from the general tone of the actors, while other times it crops up in the actual character writing.
Oh yeah, and I need you to be my 4th grade girl. Can I videotape you after school?
Okay! I just know I can't stand to take the same music test one more time! Sakura, listen! There's an escape card up there that needs to be captured, and the only way is to get another card to destroy that tower!
Not only were very specific plot points written out completely, but major character personalities became skewed. Characters like Madison, had a lot of their eccentricity stripped away, while Shaoran was played up as more of a shonen protagonist. Even Sakura was written to be a bit more loud and tomboyish compared to how she is in the original, where that was often balanced out with just as many shy, quiet moments. Even though this dub wasn't produced in America, it was still made at a time where dubbing was seen as synonymous with creating a wacky Saturday morning cartoon. And maybe if it was produced just a few years later, there would have been something there. But for now, it's far from the ideal way to watch the series outside of nostalgia, and its relevance is only further scrutinized after the subsequent ones that later came out.
Hiro was right. He could count on me, and from that day on, my life would never be the same.
So about a year after the dub for the first Cardcaptor film came out, the second Cardcaptor Sakura movie was released on DVD by Pioneer Entertainment, with 3 major differences being that there were no visual edits, a completely different voice cast, and no name changes except for this mistake here.
I always take every opportunity to record Sakura when she wears the clothes I made just for her. The choice is ultimately mine.
No, I just...
You did want to see Sakura again, didn't you?
This dub was instead handled by LA-based studio BangZoom Entertainment, and is filled with now veterans of the industry that a lot of dub fans might recognize, like Kari Wahlgren, Mona Marshall, Steve Bloom, Wendy Lee, Michelle Ruff, Joshua Seth, and so many more. Oh, would you look at that, the villain was even played by the English voice of Chun-Li from those old Street Fighter animated movies. She's only got like 5 lines in the whole movie, but that's kinda cool. And damn, comparing this dub to the original is... just not fair. For years, this was the closest the original series got to a high-quality uncut dub that almost fully captures the spirit of the original. And even though I will always have a fondness for that first hack dub, watching this film makes me think we really missed out on something great. Kari Wahlgren as Sakura strikes a good balance between sounding shy and innocent during the film's quieter moments, but she's not above being adamant during the comedic or stubborn ones.
When Shaoran told me how he felt, he did it in person. That's why I want to see him and tell him the right way.
Late morning, monster.
Would you stop calling me that?
Mona Marshall also sounds believably young and respectful, and the two have great chemistry on screen.
Even if this feeling that's important to me disappears, I'll feel this way about you again.
There's a real sense of playfulness that permeates across the rest of the cast. Even though this is technically the first time a lot of these characters were played by these actors, it doesn't feel that way. Really, the only performance I wasn't super keen on was Michelle Ruff as Tomoyo, as I think she sounded a bit too quiet compared to the original. But I think she could have easily grown into the character with some time.
But at least this means I'll have another opportunity as well.
Even though that's all we really got from this cast, and the sheer scarcity of the original Pioneer DVDs has kind of caused this dub to be considered the black sheep of the franchise.
You still haven't changed, Miss Taidoji.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if there are a lot of anime fans out there that don't even know that this dub exists. But of course, these weren't the only English dubs for the series. An alternative dub was produced in Hong Kong by Animax Asia specifically for airing in Southeast Asian territories. While we couldn't find the exact time that this dub was recorded, it has been shown unedited and uncut with the original music, making it the most faithful dub of the original series in its closeness to the Japanese version, for better and for worse. To be fair and balanced, this dub isn't nearly as bad as some of the worst Southeast Asian dubs that we've seen. This isn't Gundam Build Fighters bad.
That gem, it's pretty.
No, it's just a rock.
I don't recall coming across any noticeable audio issues. You could argue that most of these actors display a vocal range closer to what was found in the original version compared to the aforementioned hack dub, and there are some moments that emulate the original's goofy charm. However, while the hack dub suffered by deliberately trying to distance itself from the intentions of the original, this dub has the exact opposite problem.
Fight! But I told you, Kiro, I'm no good at fighting!
I know there are a lot of people who have an attachment to this dub and appreciate its closeness to the original translation. However, much like other Animax dubs, the dub script runs the risk of compromising the individual performances, with certain characters sounding more stilted and awkward as the show goes on.
We've come to wish a Happy New Year to you!
Wow, you guys must have got up at the crack of dawn to do this.
No, we didn't!
You and Chloe Reed always let him get away with murder, don't you?
Some may say it's a good change, others may say it's a bad change.
There are a few standout performances, but just as many that stand out for all of the wrong reasons.
The Cardcaptor is here to protect our town from the disastrous Clo Cards. That's so cool!
You're going to be in a real movie?
I'll be there to capture your brave and selfless deeds on my video.
I'm in danger!
You know, I'm starting to think this character just might be cursed, guys. Actually, no, it's not just that, because even with the more loyal script, this dub still carries over the weird, inconsistent name pronunciations from the original dubs.
So you really are good at cooking, huh, Shaoran? I hope we can stay good friends this year, Shaoran.
Sure.
Now, Animax dubs are nothing new, but what makes this one stand out is that it's kind of unavoidable. This dub was the one released in 2014 in America on the NIS Blu-ray release, and is currently available on various streaming platforms like Netflix and Funimation, making this the definitive English version of the series. Not only is that honestly kind of sad, but it's also awkward since the latter streaming platform would later host the final and most recent dub cast for the franchise. Years later, the original Cardcaptor Sakura series got a sequel in the form of Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card, this time with a dub by Funimation. I do find it interesting that they cast Monica Rial and Jason Liebrick as Sakura and Shaoran respectively, considering that these actors technically played different versions of these characters from another show.
I had no clue! Thank you for telling me!
I do have to pick up a few more supplies in town for the dig tomorrow, though. You, want to tag along?
Nah, I'm fine. Besides, I can't exactly tell my teacher I missed school because of a weird dream. Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
Cardcaptor Sakura and Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles all take place in the same universe, written by the same author. We don't have time to get into Clamp lore today, but I can understand what ADR director Caitlin Glass had in mind with trying to keep some sense of consistency in this mess of a franchise. Even though that desire for consistency is inconsistent, but I digress. I can safely recommend this dub, and I do like the fact that everyone seems to be taking cues from the previous dubs while also doing their own thing with the material. It even has some nice little flourishes like the insert songs being dubbed and the occasional creative localization workarounds. But inversely, I feel like the acting and directing never really reach any major highs that are reflective of the franchise. While I think the dub is overall okay, it isn't the best work a lot of its key players have displayed. Even though honestly it's hard to blame the staff for this lack of impact when the show itself doesn't really give the characters a lot to work with. The whole season will warm your heart as someone who grew up with the original, but as soon as the novelty of getting the gang back together wears off, I feel like what we're left with is something very shallow. As a sequel, Clear Card mostly retreads a lot of character beats, feeling lesser than what we had before in the process, while just stopping after spending 22 episodes setting things up. The manga is still ongoing, and maybe if we got a continuation that actually paid off everything that was being established, things would be better. But as it stands, it feels like we're left with a show that kept struggling to find its own identity. Similar to the BangZoom dub, I can see a lot of these actors working for these characters if they were there at the beginning. But for others, it's tricky because you could argue that some of them are just written too differently from their initial introduction to give an accurate comparison. Personally, the biggest question mark would be Jason as Shaoran, who I honestly think plays the quiet, withdrawn version of the character very well.
I didn't feel anything. This isn't like when we collected the Cloud cards.
Shaoran, what's wrong?
However, my concerns creep up when I remember how loud, stubborn, and angry the character used to be before all of his character development. I don't think it's impossible, but I wonder if Jason can balance all of that while maintaining a vocal range that matches how young Shaoran is supposed to be in this series, especially when it feels like Clear Card already shows hints of him pushing his range.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Who are you?
Well, at least I can feel confident in saying that this is probably the best and most consistent Tomoyo has ever sounded in English.
No trouble at all! Nothing could possibly be more important than filming my adorable Sakura!
For now, I feel about this dub the same way I feel about the season itself. It has some unique ideas and tries to pay tribute to its predecessors, but at the same time, it doesn't really do a lot either positively or negatively to really stand out from what came before it. It's just kind of there. Certainly not a terrible note to end on, but also not really an exciting one either. I honestly don't see NIS of America showing any desire to produce a redub, which is a shame. Like Revolutionary Girl Utena, we're talking about a show whose influence can be felt practically everywhere, and if there's a lesson to be learned from redubs like Sailor Moon, it's that some sense of uniformity in its English adaptation would only help broaden its appeal. If it were up to me, I would love to see the BangZoom cast get a chance to finish what they ended, or maybe some mix of them with the Clear Card cast would be nice as multi-regional recording becomes more commonplace. Who knows, maybe the Nelvana cast could do a good job if they were allowed to actually dub it uncut. I'm open to anything really, because honestly, most other alternatives feel better than what we have now, and I think that's what I'm most disappointed about after going through all of this. Unlike some other shows that are dubbed poorly once and then forgotten, this show feels like it was given chance after chance after chance after chance, only to fall short. Who knows, maybe a good consistent dub for the whole franchise just wasn't in the cards. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this interesting little retrospective on the localization history of the Cardcaptor Sakura franchise. Which dubs were your favorite? And who would you like to see come back to play these characters if they ever did decide to redub it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as with all of our other videos, any corrections or updates will be made in the pinned comment as well. Special thanks to all our patrons who continue to support us, including Reagan Senpai, Ahoba, JR Pictures, Marissa Lenti, Spartacus, Queen Era 2, Seth Phillips, Tristan Gallant, Andrew Wade Pittman, Unknown Secret 1000, and Xavier Gordon. This has been the Cartoon Cipher, and until next time.